Well, hello again. We are back, I think, for the final video in this series. We're going to go ahead and paint the cabinet. First, I'm going to lay on some automotive light gray primer, and we'll sand the primer down very nice, just gently sand it down. I have some 1000 grit wet dry sandpaper we can do that with. We'll do it dry. And I've already sanded the cabinet down with 800 grit. The only place you're going to find the 800 and 1000 grit that I know of is at an auto parts store. It's for paint, okay? For finish sanding. Anyway, this thing, I wanted to get the glass, or the plastic dowel lens out of here, but I couldn't do it because it was wedged in. There's a bracket underneath that holds it in, and then after you take the bracket off, it's wedged in. So it's just one of those deals. I didn't want to pry it out because it would have cracked, so I just went ahead and just taped it off, then put a piece of cardboard on the inside. Like I said, this thing loads from the bottom when it goes in, so I'm going to go ahead and let's see, what is that? Is that got to come off that? Nope, that's all part of it, part of the original. So we'll go ahead and I sanded down the back a little bit too. There were some high spots. Hopefully it'll turn out good, so let me go ahead and get started. I'm just going to mount it on top of these two. I want to get it up off the table. Just mount it on top of these two paint cans like that, and that'll hold it. And then I can go ahead and start shooting it to it. Just put a light coat on it first. Don't go heavy anytime you paint these cabinets. Go light at first, then you can add another coat to it later. Nice and light. Don't try to cover it all at once. Take your time, and you'll have a nicer looking cabinet when you get done. Trust me on that, okay? And that applies to just about anything you paint. Better to have several light coats than one big heavy globby coat, okay? While the cabinet is drying, I'm going to let it set overnight with that primer. I went ahead and cleaned up the speaker grill and sprayed it with what's called Brilliant Silver by Krylon. I put the primer on, of course. Always prime first so your paint sticks well, and sprayed it with this. That does a pretty good job as far as silver goes. You know, it was a lot better than I was going to initially spray it with this. Now this is just metallic finish. That you can see it's a lot duller. And the Rust-Oleum epoxy silver would have been a whole lot duller too. So we went with the Brilliant. It looks pretty darn good if I can get a focus here. Kind of hard to focus on that grill because all those little lines on it. But anyway, I will let this dry overnight also. Well, this is the color we're going to be using because it's the closest I could find that pleased my eye. So let's get started on it. It's a Valspar. I don't know what it's called. It's a satin, and they don't really give the name of the color. But anyway, I like the satin colors. You know that. I don't like that shiny stuff. We'll see how this thing works. A little at a time. Just kind of bring it up. It says it's a no drip formula. We'll find out. Oh, she's looking pretty good already. Well, there it is. I think it looks pretty good. You know, this is the first step. It's completely painted all the way around. That paint is a primer and paint mixture. So when you get that sort of paint, it's not quite as smooth as an actual paint only would be. So we'll be taking some 1000 grit paper and going over the entire thing, smoothing it down, very nice. And hopefully I won't break through the below surface. By the way, you know, the original, I mentioned in the, I think it was the first video, that the original color of this thing was brown. Yeah, it was, but it was painted at the factory. Now, a lot of radios you'll find that are different colors. If you look on the inside, whether they're plastic or Bakelite, they'll be brown. Don't ask me why. Cheaper plastic, I guess. Cheaper, I guess Bakelite's always brown, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, we'll go ahead and let this set. I think what I'm going to do is let this thing set overnight, and then tomorrow we'll give it the old 1000 grit paper treatment, and then the last thing to go on will be a couple of coats of clear satin. I don't know, our dogs heard something. Listen, they're going crazy in there. Well, it dried overnight, and today I took real fine sandpaper and sanded down the top nice and smooth, and the sides, you know, not a whole lot of pressure. You don't need a lot of pressure. You can feel like little tiny bumps after you spray paint from a can on something like this. And then what you do is you take your little 800 or 1000 grit paper and you go over it nice and light with your hands, with a piece nice and easy, like all around the whole thing, until you feel it go smooth. Not a lot of pressure. You don't need to use a lot of pressure when you're just knocking off those little bumps until it's nice and smooth, okay? And make sure any place that you may have gone through, especially along these edges, which is very, very easy to do, okay? I went through right here and had to give it another quick shot, but it's nice and smooth again. Now what I'm going to do is put on one, maybe two coats of Valspar clear satin sealer. Well, we're all done with the cabinet and everything else. I originally painted this silver, but then I got looking at it and I said, you know, I'm not really crazy about that silver. The texture didn't look right. So I went ahead and I stripped it all off using some lacquer thinner, and I'll be a son of a gun if it wasn't gold underneath. And I said, no, I like that. I'll just leave it like that. So I put some clear enamel over the top, changed the colors in the center of the knobs, and that took care of the cabinet. It shined up the best I could with some Plastex. It got some of the blemishes out. But, oh, one more thing I want to show you. Hang on. This is the way I decided to handle that external antenna wire. I just put a crimp-on connector where someone could just stick a wire up in there, or an alligator clip or something, and we'll just keep that up inside like that. That'll have to do. Now let's go back to the front. You know, as with most AA5s that I've worked on, I keep running into the same problem over and over. Well, not every time, but it's almost consistent. You take the radio out of the cabinet, you change your caps and resistors, you clean it all up and everything plays perfectly, you put it back in the cabinet and it does not work. That's the situation I have right now. It'll only pick up a strong station. Listen to this. It was playing fine before I put it back in the cabinet. I also got something right there as a problem. Sounds to me like a tuner plate touching. Anyway, I'm almost certain that's what it is. Isn't that terrible? Isn't that terrible? It goes from playing perfectly to not playing at all. So I will have to tear this apart one more time, I guess. I don't know what the problem is. Jeez, these AA5s, they can drive you crazy. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll go ahead and wrap this video up here, and meanwhile, later on tonight, I'll tear this thing apart again, find out maybe what the problem is, and maybe a wire touching, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Anyway, until next time, this is John. In addition to working on the Silvertone, I'm also working on a Filco model 40-150 that was sent to me by Old Radio Al quite a while back. The cabinet's been stripped. I filled it with, it's got some dust on it here. Anyway, the cabinet's been stripped. It was, you know, I've got the pastewood filler in it, and I've since put a sealer on it. You know, that Minwax sealer that I like to use whenever I'm doing finishing on cabinets. And then I put gunstock stain on it. It looks really nice. It's coming along better than I thought. So all I have to do now, I'm going to let it set for a couple days and harden up real good. Then I'm going to go ahead and lightly sand it with 1000 grit paper, smooth it down real good. And then just start putting some clear lacquer finish on it. It'll be a satin finish on this one. The chassis, unfortunately, as usual with these old Filcos, has a bad audio output transformer. One of the windings is open, and everything else seems to be okay, but we'll keep plugging away on it, you know, bit by bit. Old Brendan, you know, he's one of these guys, he likes to work on one radio at a time. Me, I don't care. 2, 3, 4, 5, it doesn't matter to me. Just keep plugging away on each one, a little bit here, a little bit there. The only thing this radio has a problem with, and it's not really a problem in my mind, see, it's got a little stain on the top, down into the wood. You know, I've figured out where that came from. That's a whiskey stain, and it came from a brothel, a 1940s brothel in Chicago. Yep, they spilled their whiskey, their drink on it. So I'm just going to leave it like that. I think it looks kind of neat. Proud battle scar of a bygone era. One other project we're going to have in the future is we're going to reduce the size of our crystal tester I built quite a while ago, remember? We had a couple of crystals out of that Drake 2B radio that tested good and all the rest tested dead. Well, one of our good subscribers, his YouTube handle is IP040759. He said he's messed around with crystal testers and he thinks that I may have built this thing too big. I have too much inductance, too much capacitance, therefore it won't test those crystals because it's incapable of falling in that frequency range, or it's being messed up by that capacitance and inductance. He thinks that should shorten everything up, you know. Well, you know, in my mind, I think that's a little overthinking a problem. However, I don't know. And when I don't know, I'm going to listen to someone who claims to know until I find out differently. So what we're going to do is we are going to shorten this entire board out. We're going to move everything down, scrunch, 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 and hopefully get it down to about this size right here. Now, he also said that we should have a ground plane. Well, this wire right here is acting as the ground plane. I think that's what he's talking about. Or he's talking about maybe a metal backing or something. I'm not sure what he means by a ground plane, but I'm sure he'll jump in when he sees this. But we're going to go ahead and scrunch everything down. And then we're going to put it inside this soapbox, this plastic soapbox. And we're going to bring the leads out. I'm just going to set it in there. We're going to bring the leads out through a couple of holes here and here and have a place for the power, you know, to go in, that sort of thing. And we'll see if that doesn't improve the situation on those crystals that test bad. So that's what's coming up in addition to everything else.